everybody, this is Nate with another Backcountry beer review. I'm on a very significant peak today, and despite its significance, unfortunately it does not have a real name. It is the furthest south point in the Rocky Mountain chain that is above 12,000 feet, and it's also the furthest south point in the Rocky Mountain chain that's above tree line. Given that this is both the furthest south above 12,000, furthest south above tree line, I think it really does deserve a name. If you have any ideas for what this peak should be named, leave it in the comments below. The beer I'm reviewing today is by Rowley Farmhouse Ales in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it's their Easy Lover Braggot. I've already reviewed their Germophile Berliner Weisse, and it was delicious. And the thing with Rowley is that you always know that their beer is going to be very complex, and it's going to have a lot of effort put into it to make it very good. So this beer is, it's not really a beer. It's called Easy Lover, and I mentioned it was a braggot. So a braggot is actually, it's a fermented beverage that's made from a mix of malt and honey. So it's sort of like halfway between a mead and a beer, but I don't believe that this actually has hops in it, so it is really just kind of a thing of its own. Never reviewed a braggot before. I've never had a braggot before in my life. The closest thing would maybe be the Ladrone Peak Elixir I reviewed a while back. I think it was episode 17. That was a beer that was mixed with honey and some other spices and herbs. Now this is a barrel-aged Biscuit Cheeto braggot that has natural pétillant carbonation. And this beer was brewed in collaboration with Superstition Meadery in Arizona. So it's a really cool, interesting concept. So normally I'd kind of leave the details of the beer if they're not given on the can. Normally I'd give them in the description below, but it's very important to understand what's in this beverage so that it can help you understand what I'm tasting. If I'm going off memory here, I believe what they did was they took a barrel full of honey and barrel aged it in oak barrels that I think had been used, and barrel aged it for like 12 or 15 months. Then they mixed that honey in with like a malt wort or something, malt mash, whatever you want to call it, hopless malt mixture, and fermented that for something like another 12 months, I think, in barrels that had been taken from Superstition Meadery that had previously been used to age their Apercu apricot mead. So a lot of barrel aging going on, barrel aging before and after the fermentation steps. And then in addition, after the fermentation had taken place, I think was how this process took place, they added spices, vanilla, star anise, and I want to say clove maybe. I'm not so sure about that. But they added some spices to make it taste like a Biscuit Cheeto. A Biscuit Cheeto is a very popular cookie in Hispanic cultures, and in New Mexico, you know, obviously we're close to Mexico, there's a lot of meeting of different cultures in this state. Biscuit Cheetos are probably one of the most iconic treats, one of the most iconic desserts in the state. And it's pretty much synonymous with the Christmas season, which is, you know, I plan on this video to air probably early December, so perfect timing to review a Biscuit Cheeto beer. All right, it is time for that sip. So if you're like me, you've probably never had a braggot, and you've probably never had a barrel-aged braggot. You've probably never had a barrel-aged braggot made with barrel-aged honey, and you've probably never had all those things with Biscuit Cheeto spices in them. So first thing I'm gonna do is just zoom out a little bit. I'm gonna go over the three main notes I get. The tartness. This is not tart like a kettle sour or a Berliner Weisse. This is tart like a classic Belgian sour, and I think that's very reflective of both their farmhouse yeast and the fact that this sat in a barrel for a year or something. I don't know if I would call this a sour, but it is quite tart. And I do also wonder if maybe some of the natural yeasts or some of the yeast left over from the mead in the barrel also contributed a little bit to the fermentation. Now the woodiness, obviously barrel-aged honey, the thing was barrel-aged itself for a year. I get a lot of woodiness here, a lot of oak in particular. And if I have any criticism about this drink, which again, I love Rowley, I love their beer, and I love that they made this, and I think this is very good, but it doesn't mean I can't come up with a little bit of criticism. If I had a criticism for this, I would say that maybe the oak is a little too dominant. It kind of reminds me of a young whiskey. A lot of craft whiskeys are young, they're made in small barrels, and so you get this very strong oak note And that's kind of what I'm getting with this. I'm getting a lot of tannins on the finish as well. Sorry to bounce around in the flavor profile here, but yeah, a lot of tannins in the finish, tannin bitterness. If I use some wine tasting tricks, you know, right, aerate in your mouth. If I use some wine tasting tricks, that's where the finer notes of the oak kind of come out. You get a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of that classic oak spice that you get in like whiskeys and oaked red wine. On the note of spice, I hate to say it, but I'm not really picking up the anise or whatever other spices that were added to this to make it Biscuit Cheeto-like. I mean, obviously I mentioned the vanilla, so maybe that's from the oak, maybe that's from the vanilla that was added, but as far as the anise and stuff, yeah, not really getting it at all. Picked it up a bit in the aroma, but in the flavor, not really getting it. And the last note I talked about was the fruitiness and floralness. I mean, obviously that's coming from the honey, the fact that this is made with honey. And, you know, so what flower does it taste like? I don't know. Honeysuckle maybe. Vanilla flower, I guess. Vanilla does come in a pod. You always see the vanilla packaging has a flower on it, so vanilla flower, sure. It was funny because I was tasting this at home and I identified apricot and peach skin as some of the flavor profiles, and this was before I knew that it was aged in the Apercu barrel, so I do wonder if maybe the apricot flavor from that barrel is coming through a little bit in this braggot. Overall, you know, this braggot, sorry, is extremely interesting, very complex, and it is very delicious. I love Rowley for their beer, and I love that they're willing to experiment this way and create something like this, which takes a lot of time and effort, rather than doing what some breweries do and just throwing a Kool-Aid packet or a pickle or something like that in the beer and saying, oh, look, we're being creative. It's like, no, this is creative. If it's still available, again, I bought this in April 2021, so they might not be selling it anymore. If it's still available, I definitely recommend picking it up and trying it just so you can experience this interesting drink. I'm sure it's probably going to be the first time you've ever had a braggot. Cheers. Have a backcountry beer for me. Hey everyone, made it to the top of Tsuke Peak. I'm part of my high country circuit near Santa Fe. And I just wanted to mention that if you haven't noticed yet, down in the description of the video is a little backcountry beer review map. You could see all the places I've done backcountry beer reviews and all the breweries. They're all mapped up there, so check it out.